This interview from George Russell has aged like fine wine.
He cannot deal with adversity. Whenever anything is not going his way, he lashes out with unnecessary anger and borderline violence,
Okay, so obviously, we gotta start by talking about one man. But before we talk about #that incident, we've gotta set the scene. The Spanish Grand Prix was an important weekend for this year's championship. In the lead up to everything, the talk of the town was flexi wings, a technical directive introduced to reduce the amount of mandatory flexing on the front wing by 5mm, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in a sport where fine margins make the biggest difference, a lot of people were hopeful for the playing field to be somewhat leveled out. I mean, at least a little bit. As always, Red Bull worked overtime to get the FIA to implement this change. Meanwhile, McLaren said that it wasn't going to make that big of a difference to them. Red Bull didn't have their usual Friday practice struggles. The car was pretty well balanced from FP1, and so the guys back at the factory could finally have a day off. Okay, not literally, but they didn't have to pull off the usual overnight heroics they do between Friday and Saturday. Now, Red Bull believed that the new technical directive helped to make setting up the car easier, and enabled them to find the sweet spot much quicker. However, I'd argue it's also due to the fact that these teams know Barcelona like the back of their hand, so optimizing the car is more trivial compared to other tracks. Also, this is round 9 of the season, so you'd expect them to have improved in getting the car into an optimal window for Max. He did pretty decent in qualifying, putting it in P3. His getaway from the line was solid, jumping Norris to claim P2 on the first lap. From there, he attempted to put Piastri under pressure, but the Red Bull simply just couldn't keep its tyres in great condition for very long. He was also complaining about a bunch of other issues during the race, like the balance being, quote, broken. Basically, he was annoyed well before the big moment. His strategy was actually quite decent. They tried to pressure McLaren by pitting earlier than them, but ultimately it didn't work. However, it was worth a try. And there was a brief moment where he got blocked by Behrman, which only made his blood boil even more. But then, Antonelli's car just shuts down, and the safety car is deployed. A small glimmer of hope to maybe jump one of the McLarens and hold them off in the last few laps. Now, most drivers came into the pits for soft tyres, but Red Bull decided to put him on hards. Now, initially, I thought the strategists were completely bugging, taking a page from Ferrari's book. But actually, given he was on a 3-stop, he didn't have any other choice of new tyres available. Now, would it have been better to fit a set of old soft tyres, or even have stayed out and maintained track position? Who knows? But obviously, the moment he saw the compound he was on, his anger meter hit the tipping point. So then, the race restarts, and bro has a massive tank slapper and almost flies into the wall, allowing Leclerc to pull up alongside, and they actually make contact going down the straight. But wait, there's more. Russell is now about to overtake, gets alongside, but is affected by dirty air from Leclerc in front. So he understeers into Verstappen and forces him onto the runoff. Max comes back out ahead, and Red Bull tell him to give back the position. And at this point, I knew it was Jova. Verstappen's alter ego, Mad Max, has now taken over this car. In my opinion, I don't think he needed to give the position back. Even though George had his front axle alongside the mirror, he wasn't fully in control since he had that snap of oversteer. But having said that, Red Bull telling Max to swap positions was probably coming from a good place, so as to avoid a potential penalty. But that's the last thing he's trying to hear when he's already so pissed off. Eventually, he decides to listen to his team and eases off to let Russell through. But then, he just says, nah, screw it, and attempts a Schumacher 1997. Instantly saw this and said, ref, surely that's a red, send him off the pitch. Genuinely though, that penalty he got in the end was pretty light. How he escaped with only a 10-second penalty? How much is Jos paying these stewards, bro? Sebastian Vettel in Baku 2017 got a 10-second stop and go penalty for dangerous driving. And just last race, George himself got a drive-through for cutting a corner in Monaco. But somehow, intentionally crashing into someone gets you only a 10-second time penalty. I actually have no idea why Max cannot keep his emotions in check. Exactly as Russell said, whenever anything isn't going his way, he lashes out. Now, the way this guy said it was too funny, man. And I remember him getting clowned for this, but he was 100% right. Sometimes he just completely loses his head and does the most diabolical stuff you've ever seen. He wanted to prove a point with that move, but only made himself look childish. Most of the people on Sky, apart from Nico Rosberg and Anthony Davidson, were just kind of treading on eggshells when talking about this incident. But nah, I ain't doing that. Just call a spade a spade. This was just dumb. And I know he doesn't care about what anyone else thinks, and he's most likely never gonna change. But that doesn't make what he did any better. He's driving like it's F1 Open lobbies in real life. And since he no longer feels he has a shot at winning the championship, he'll just keep playing bumper cars with whoever wants it. Those final few moments though, I won't lie, that was some of the most entertaining action I've seen all year. As controversial as he is, Max Verstappen makes the sport way more interesting. Although, what I can never understand is why he reacts like that. He was driving like a sore loser instead of the world-class, multi-time world champion we're so used to seeing weekend in and weekend out. It's also crazy how he got awarded driver of the day too. This sport is too funny. 99% of drivers, whenever they're having a bad day, feel frustrated, but never intentionally take that frustration out on others. With Max though, if he feels aggrieved, he will literally do anything. Saw it with Ocon in Brazil 2018, saw it a bunch in 2021 with Lewis, like brake checking him in Jeddah. We also saw it with Lando last year, particularly Mexico. That was just atrocious. You'd think after how many championships this guy's won, that maybe, just maybe, he would have matured. Thing is, he was having a great race up until that point. But now, because of that crash out, he's now almost 50 points behind Oscar in the Drivers' Championship. Also got 3 more penalty points on his license in the process, meaning he's now just 1 more away from a race ban. Oh yeah, and here's his onboard. And you know what the irony of this entire situation is? The move George made on Max is exactly how he loves to race others. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Max Verstappen would hate to race against Max Verstappen. Time and time again, he's proved he can dish it, but he can't take it. And then when he's called out for it, he plays the victim, claiming stuff like, "I've got the wrong passport." I get being frustrated and understand it being the heat of the moment. But if using your car as a weapon to crash into others is your default response to being wronged, you got an issue. And one of the reasons why he can continue doing stuff like this is because the FIA have enabled him. Again, I'm going to mention 2021. A lot of the maneuvers he did, the stewards were very lenient with, simply because he was fighting Lewis, who people wanted to see lose. Then, he took things so far that they changed the wording of the regulations, introducing the whole ahead of the apex BS to legitimize Verstappen's way of driving for times when he's angry or his back is against the wall. Because he can race incredibly well wheel to wheel. It's just that in certain moments, he acts like a toddler. Only now have some of the other drivers woken up and started using the same tactics against him. But he doesn't like that. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on Max's move down in the comments. There's a lot more from that weekend we have to discuss, starting with his teammate. Yuki qualified in P20. It's just sad, man. When this dude was in the V-Carb, he was tearing everyone up. Pause. I'm very certain he would have been threatening the top 5 if he were in that car right now. But this second Red Bull seat, it's like they don't even care about it. Pierre Vacher said after qualifying, "We tried something completely different with Yuki, with a bigger rear wing to see how it performed in qualifying, which was a mistake on our part." Why are they trying radically different setups in qualifying? You literally had 3 practice sessions to do that. They're treating him like a test/development driver, acting like he's not even there full time. Yuki himself said the lap felt pretty good, so whatever Red Bull did to that car, for him to end up being dead last, but it's nothing new. They haven't cared about their second driver for a long time and probably never will, as long as Max is still around. So it's a waste of Yuki's time and talent to simply be their test guinea pig, especially when he's worked so hard to get an opportunity at a top team. His race was a bit better, coming back to 13th after they changed the car completely and started from the pit lane. But there's really not much else to say regarding that second Red Bull seat. Oscar Piastri set the lap of the season so far, clearing everyone by over 2 tenths. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the biggest margin for pole that we've had all season. His final run in Q3 was so impressive to watch. While Norris was trying too hard and overdriving the car, Piastri was flowing so elegantly. It was beautiful to watch. It's crazy to think how in 2024, Oscar got consistently dunked on in qualifying, losing the head-to-head with Lando 20-4. But this season, it's been way closer, currently 5-4 in Piastri's favour. The step up he's taken on a Saturday is huge. Maybe it's due to the fact that he's now fighting for a world championship and so he's more locked in. Maybe it's because he's been given the opportunity to actually compete against Lando and not be a number 2. Maybe it's because this car suits him much better than last year and so he's able to extract more from it. It's probably a combination of all those factors and a lot more. But it's genuinely insane how much he stepped up to the plate this year. He got a brilliant start and pretty much never looked back. Norris followed home in P2 in what was a dominant victory for McLaren. They're now so far ahead in the constructors that they can miss the next 4 races and the team that is currently second finish 1-2 in all 4 of them, McLaren would still have a 25-point lead. And the team that is currently second in the constructors, ladies and gentlemen, is Ferrari. Somehow, they've scammed their way to P2 with a dog of a car that is the SF25. Charles decided to go into qualifying with 1 less set of soft tyres compared to everyone else, but that meant for the race, he had 1 extra set of new mediums, which is what he wanted. He also decided to set his final Q3 lap in between the first and second set of runs, but unfortunately for him, the track temperatures dropped quite a lot and others made some sizable improvements. In the end, he ended up 7th. Lewis did a great job to put the car in P5, especially after all his Friday struggles and gearbox issues in FP3. He got an amazing start flying into 4th, but after that had literally zero pace. Charles breezed by and gapped him, and then in the final stint, I witnessed my GOAT get overtaken by a kick Sauber. Now Fred Vasseur did say he was carrying an issue on his car. Turns out that after one of the stops, Ferrari made a front wing adjustment that made the car completely undrivable. And the worst part is, I don't even think Lewis requested it. I just hope he can get over this quickly because he seemed so dejected after the race. Anyway, Charles managed to go from P7 to P3. Just Leclerc things at this point. He has been so unreal this year. If only Ferrari produced a car that could consistently challenge McLaren. Every year, it's so frustrating to watch his talents just get wasted. But it is what it is. Him and Max had a little incident down the straight. Nah, I'm sorry, that's so overused. But that didn't go any further with the stewards. Nonetheless, it added to the plot of Verstappen's crash out. Overall, I think Ferrari will take a podium away from this weekend after struggling a lot compared to the others in the Big Four. But they still need to improve a lot if they want to fight for podiums and wins on merit. Mercedes bounced back from the nightmare of Monaco. Both drivers made it through to Q3 this time and were very competitive, with Russell setting the exact same lap time as Verstappen. And once again, starting P4 on the grid, the same position he started for last year's race where he took the lead at turn 1, but it didn't happen for him this time. In fact, he actually lost positions to both Ferraris. Then, he obviously had the tangle with Max. Antonelli was doing pretty decent until his engine shut down, which is pretty concerning for Mercedes because this is the second time in 2 weeks that this has happened. Overall, their weekend could have been better, and since Spain is typically a track they excel at, their pace wasn't all that encouraging. But they still managed to get some decent points with George in the end, which was good. Aston Martin have improved quite a bit recently. Fernando was great in qualifying, although he did his lap way too early, just like Charles. So he went from P5 to P10 in the span of like 4 minutes. Stroll could only manage P13, but news broke after qualifying that he's been struggling with pain in his wrist for the past 6 weeks. And it's related to the injury he suffered prior to the 2023 season, and I guess it's never really recovered. So sadly, he didn't get to start, but hopefully he has a speedy recovery. And to add more salt to the wound, the next race is in Canada, which is his home. Depending on whether he'll need to take more time off, we could see Felipe Drugovich finally get his shot in F1 that he's been waiting so long for. I don't know about you, but that's something I want to see. Although I'm not going to lie, Stroll being the lead point scorer for Aston Martin, even though he's been driving one-handed, is insanely tough. Fernando though, at his home race, finally got some points of his own. Albeit, he did have one heart-in-mouth moment going through the gravel. But to break the streak in Spain, of all places, must have felt good. He was on a mission with some of those overtakes at the end. Like this one on Bortoleto was just sublime. In fact, speaking of Bortoleto, this kid was insane during qualifying. Out-qualified his experienced teammate Nico Hulkenberg and ended up starting 12th on the grid. And I've been eagerly anticipating a big performance like this from him, and on Saturday, he delivered it. And honestly, given the situation he's in, having one of the slowest cars on the grid despite being the Formula 2 champion, he's been extremely mature and overall very impressive. In the race, he just missed out on points, but Nico just randomly decided to wake up and drive like prime Ayrton Senna, putting that Sauber in positions it has literally never seen before. I honestly didn't even realize he was so high up until those final few laps, but his race management was elite. Picking up from where he left off with Haas, it's now time to carry another team on his back. And can we take a moment to applaud Isaac Hadjar? The guy has consistently made it through to Q3 and is the only rookie to have 0 Q1 eliminations so far. The V-Cup has been a very nice car to drive according to him, Yuki and Liam. Even though it might not have the outright pace of the front-running teams, the mere fact that it's so well balanced allows Hadjar to push it to the absolute limit. And so far this season, he's been able to pull out important laps when they matter. On Sunday, he drove beautifully once again. Lawson was also driving great, pulling off some outstanding overtakes. He finished just outside the points in 11th. Meanwhile, Hadjar brought it home in 7th as the lead Frenchman on track. His fellow countryman Pierre finished 1 place behind in 8th. And these guys were watching PSG completely dominate Inter in the Champions League final just hours before the race. Gasly's teammate Colapinto was 15th. He had some technical issues in qualifying and never really made an impression in the race. Williams expected to struggle this weekend. Spain hasn't been a great track for them in the past, although I didn't expect Sainz to be knocked out so early. Albon almost got through to Q3, which was good, but in the race, he was going through the wars and eventually retired. Carlos didn't have a great day either, finishing 14th, but tough times never last. I'm sure Williams will be back with a bang in Canada. And Haas were completely nowhere. I think it's fair to say, this championship is mainly going to be between the two McLaren drivers. Piastri's looking more and more like the favourite, but I wouldn't count out Norris just yet. I hope you all enjoyed. I personally found that race very entertaining, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you're new to get my latest videos in the future. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.